Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 20th of November of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to continue our discussion regarding the Trump's plan with 28 points. Today we received additional details, so let's discuss them. First of all, I would like to tell you that before we start everything, I would like to point your attention that by the time I started making this video, no meeting between the President of Ukraine Zelenskyy and the US generals started. So nothing started, nothing has started yet. So we are waiting for this, and maybe by the time you're gonna watch this video, you will have additional details about this meeting. So let's discuss everything, let's say, before this meeting. US generals will press Zelenskyy to reach an agreement with Russia today, so they don't want to push and to move this probably decision for tomorrow or for another month or for another week. They came to Ukraine to force Zelenskyy to give them an answer today, yes or no. So this is the only option for Zelenskyy. The agreement includes Russia's return to the global economy and Ukraine's renunciation of NATO membership. Ukraine will have to remove references to NATO membership from its constitution, and allies members will have to legally recognize that Ukraine will never join NATO. Zelenskyy's meeting with US generals is scheduled for this afternoon. Once again, nothing has started yet. The main topic of the conversation will be pressuring Zelenskyy to accept this framework of agreements. So, but the problem is, one of the most important paragraph of this article is that the NATO allies members will have to legally recognize that Ukraine will never join NATO. And today, several European leaders stated that they will not accept this, let's say, plan, Trump's plan. European countries have spoken out against Trump's new peace plan for Ukraine. According to Reuters, European Union foreign ministers made clear that they will oppose demands for punishing concessions from Kiev, and stated that any agreement must not deprive Ukraine of the ability to defend itself. Peace cannot be capitulation, said French Foreign Minister Barrot. Polish Foreign Minister Sikorsky stated that Ukraine should not be subjected to restrictions on its defense capabilities. European diplomacy chief Kallas stated that any agreement must include support for Europeans and Ukraine itself. She also noted that Trump's plan does not include any concessions from the Russian side. So as we can see, Europe probably sent a green light for Zelenskyy for any decision he wants. Another important thing is that today Zelenskyy will have a meeting with his party, and most likely lots of things will be resolved there as well. Furthermore, we got reports that Rustam Umerov hasn't returned back to Ukraine, but some sources stated that he has already returned, but he hasn't, at least by the evening of the 20th of November of 2025. And today, according to information we have, the Parliament of Ukraine, or some fractions of Ukraine Parliament, voted or prepared a law. According to this law, Rustam Umerov and Andrei Yermak will lose their positions. So we see that Ukraine will be changed, at least its political let's say top of Ukraine will be changed, and new people will come probably on the first rows. Maybe somebody will change Zelenskyy as well. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but this evening is obviously a very interesting evening. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of very interesting changes. And first let's talk about the western Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians continued their offensive operation in the area of the settlement of Stepnogorsk. I would like to remind you that according to the latest updates, the Russians managed to cut in pincers Ukrainian citadel on the northern part of the settlement, and today pro-Ukrainian sources made a very interesting change. As you can see, they added a very huge gray zone to the northwest of the settlement of Stepnogorsk. So when talking about the map, the pro-Ukrainian sources added this area as a gray zone. So they're trying to tell us that somehow the Russians managed to outflank Ukrainian positions and to capture these farms or some constructions and tree lines to the north of this stronghold and to the northwest of the city of Stepnogorsk. So this is a very important piece of news. Most likely the Russians indeed managed to do this. We are waiting for additional geolocations and additional clarifications of the situation, but if this information is correct, then most likely Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from the settlement of Stepnogorsk, those who managed to survive, within the next several days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the eastern Zaporozhye flank. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly. We have discussed the situation in this area during the previous video, and this is, for example, the situation by the end of the 19th of November. We just received reports that Russians entered the eastern part of Vysole and Russians entered the settlement of Zatishye few hours after we received this video, where we can see how Ukrainians were running as fast as they could in the direction of the settlement of Gulay-Pole. I haven't seen so many Ukrainians running at the same time with such a pace. So based on this video and based on these reports, we adjusted the map in this area and we came to the conclusion that the battles for Zatishye and Vysole started, and today the map was adjusted once again. So the Russians secured the settlement of Vysole, and this information was confirmed both by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and by this video that was published by pro-Russian sources. Here we can see how the clashes for the settlement of Vysole have been taking place, and in the final part of this video we can see at least 2 episodes of how Russians were raising their Russian flag in 2 points, at 2 points of the settlement, in the most northern part and in the most southern part. So this is the place where the Russians raised the flag in the north of the settlement, and this is the second flag. So they published these 2 episodes, so now we have no doubts that indeed the settlement of Vysole was secured by Russians completely. And this is not the end. According to information we have, the Russians moved further in the southern direction and as a result of clashes entered the settlement of Zelenskyy from the north, and the Russians managed to dig in deeper. So it seems that in coming days, or maybe tomorrow or maybe the day after tomorrow, Russians will secure and capture the settlement of Zelenskyy and Chervone, and Russians will force the Ukrainians to fall back in the western direction towards the city of Gulay-Pole itself. At the same time, the Russians improved their positions on the territory of Zatishye. Furthermore, several pro-Russian sources reported that this village was also captured today by the Russians, and maybe within the next several days the Russians will also confirm this information. And currently the distance between edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, possible positions according to different mappers, and the city of Gulay-Pole itself is already less than 2 kilometers. So around 2 kilometers, so 2 kilometers and let's say 30 meters, which is already nothing for the armed forces of the Russian Federation. It's the distance of one offensive of clashes for 1 day. So that's it. So the battle for Gulay-Pole will begin very, very soon, most likely in November, even in November of 2025, and most likely the main part of the battle for Gulay-Pole will be finished within this year, within 2025. And, of course, everything can be changed, but now everything depends on the solution and decision that Zelenskyy is going to make today, this evening, whether he is going to accept the Russian proposal or the Russian demands, or he will not do this. I'm not sure what exactly Zelenskyy is going to do, because the most important thing is that Zelenskyy would be forced to reduce his army till 300,000 or 400,000 soldiers. And we understand that, for example, if Ukraine has just 300,000 army, let's say across the entire Ukraine, along the border with Belarus, with Russia, and if Russia saves its army on the level of 1 million, so obviously Ukraine will have no chances if anything starts once again. So the Ukraine will not be able basically to mobilize troops, let's say, to repel a possible Russian attack in the future. Of course, in time, if this conflict will be prolonged or will continue within a few years, of course, during the next conflict, we're going to see the same picture. First, Russia with its army will be able to capture significant territories, let's say the entire eastern part of Ukraine. Then everything, the situation would be stabilized, and then another, let's say round of 2-3 year war or something like this. Anyway, let's continue with the current situation, and now let's talk about the city of Pokrovsk. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates. First of all, I would like to point to attention that Russians improved their position significantly in the northwestern and in the western parts of the city of Pokrovsk. The Russians have almost finished the battle for the northern part of the city, and the Russians are about to finish the battle for the settlement of Rivne and are about to answer the settlement of Mirnograd from the east. So as you can see, some of these changes were confirmed by video, some of them were confirmed just by different mappers. So as for the western direction, the Russian progress on the ground between the fields was confirmed just by neutral mappers, but we are waiting for additional proofs. Another important video is coming from, let's say, already the territory from the gap between Pokrovsk and the city of Mirnograd. So this is the video that was published by Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians with FPV drones. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly between these two settlements, and that the Russians continue advancing further in the eastern direction. Furthermore, today pro-Russian sources, official sources, published this video, and this is the city of Pokrovsk itself. This is the Shakhtarsky micro-district. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that the Shakhtarsky micro-district was secured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation completely. So here we can see lots of soldiers, Russian soldiers, that were moving across the city without any problems, without being afraid of attacks from Ukrainian side. So everything is stable, at least in the most southern parts, and this is the former Ukrainian southern citadel, the Shakhtarsky micro-district. So based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything. This is just another confirmation that the Russians control the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk, and that the Russians continue their clearing operation further in the northern direction. But telling the truth, if the Russians today on the 20th of November of 2025 just finished the clearing of the most southern part of the city of Pokrovsk, this means that obviously it will take them another month to finish the battle for the central and for the northern part. So most likely there are still groups of Ukrainians, pockets of resistance that the Russians are trying to fight with. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Mirnograd. According to information we have, the Russians improved their positions in the most northeastern part of the settlement, and they took under control lots of former positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Furthermore, from the northwestern part of the city of Mirnograd, we received a very interesting video published by pro-Russian sources. And here we can see how Ukrainians were trying to escape the Mirnograd cauldron with vehicles that probably managed to break through the encirclement, or vehicles that were hidden until the last moment on the territory of the city of Mirnograd. Here we can see how Ukrainians were trying to escape this encirclement, but the Russians managed to spot Ukrainian soldiers and they attacked them with FPV drones. So lots of vehicles were destroyed in the most northwestern part of the city of Mirnograd as a result of Russian FPV drone attacks. So furthermore, as you can see, the Ukrainians prepared a convoy for evacuation, so most likely they were planning to use maybe up to 10 vehicles with the purpose to break through the encirclement, but the vehicles were destroyed at the beginning, at the start of this operation. And this is a very important piece of news. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Seversk and in the Lyman direction. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos and lots of updates. So the most important is that we have lots of FPV drone attacks, as you can see, along the river of Seversky Donets. So most likely, right somewhere around these icons, we might find logistic roads of Ukraine, of the armed forces of Ukraine. So that is why the Russians were were attacking these positions, trying to cut supply and support of the city of Lyman and of the city of Siversk from the territory of the city of Slaviansk. So here we can see attack on the vehicle. Here we can see a few more attacks carried out by Russians along the supply lines. So we see that the Russians intensify their offensive operation. They are planning to break through Ukrainian defense between the current positions and the river of Seversky Donetsk. It seems that Russians are planning to capture everything using these roads of attacks and to finish the battle for Yampol, for the TO513 road, and for this entire territory. The situation for Ukraine is very difficult in this area, as we can see. Furthermore, we received a video that confirms that the Russians managed to enter the city of Lyman from its southeastern part and even to dig in deeper, because Ukrainians, as you can see according to this video, were trying to force the Russians to fall back from these buildings. Just in this video we can see two Russian soldiers that were running from one building to another, and obviously Russians will continue improving their positions here. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, the most important updates came from the Barova direction. Telling the truth, we haven't been receiving anything from this area for a very long period of time, so this direction wasn't the primary direction. But starting on November of 2025, we see that the Russians are trying to use more and more units in this direction with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this bank of the river of Oskol. So despite the fact that Russians and Ukrainians can finish the war in coming days, in coming probably days or months, Russia will try to get as many as possible square kilometers and strategical positions across the entire line of combat contact. And of course, Russia will try to establish the front line or possible border between, let's say, of Russia and Ukraine during the peaceful settlement along the river of Oskol. This is a natural barrier that can be used by Russia and Ukraine in the future. Of course, Russians may try to cross the river of Oskol to have a foothold to the southeast of the city of Kharkiv, between Chiguyev and the river of Oskol as well. So we have changes that were confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources and by different videos. As for the city of Kupiansk, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The Russians are saying that they continue repelling Ukrainian attacks, counter-attacks from the west. The Russians also emphasized that they're finishing their clearing operation. I would like to remind you that Russians promised 1 or 2 weeks ago to finish the battle for Kupiansk itself, but we see that something went not on schedule. As for the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region, during the previous 24 hours, we received changes on the territory of the city of Volchansk. This is the situation by the end of the 19th of November, and this is the situation by the end of the 20th of November. As you can see, the Russians began advancing along the railways, most likely with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Volcha. Furthermore, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the southeastern and the southern parts of the city of Volchansk itself. We believe that in coming 3 weeks the city of Volchansk would be secured and finished and captured by the Russians completely. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.